you ever watched Grey's Anatomy, you know exactly what this pose means. Or maybe you're a fan of Shia LaBeouf, and you would know what this means. Either way, it relates to what I want to talk about with you today, or discuss with you today, or just have a monologue with you today, because you don't ever seem to reply back to me. That's okay. I understand. You're a muse. And usually the only time you ever want to use your voice is when you have this grand idea you want to share with me, which is quite often. Thank you very much. What I want to talk about today is something that I think more artists need to understand. And that is, you need to be fierce with your craft. Fierce. Absolutely, utterly, profoundly, and completely fierce. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. I don't mean that you need to approach every artistic endeavor you do with a attitude, or that all of your written works have to be of a ferocious and horrific nature. But what I mean is that you have to approach every artistic endeavor that you undertake with the idea that what you're about to do is worth doing. Because so many times I see artists out there second-guessing themselves. And yes, I understand that imposter syndrome is a wily beast that can wind its way into your subconscious and make you believe that everything you do is crap. It's not. Even the law of averages says that if you do enough of something, eventually you're going to create something that is worth creating. But think about it. If you approach your craft, every work you do, with a fierce attitude, with the idea that what you're about to undertake is worth undertaking, then chances are it will be worth it. So it is time that you scrap the idea that maybe it's worth doing, maybe it's not worth doing, who knows? We'll see in the end, right? It'll all come out in the wash. Either what I have just created will be worth consuming or it won't be. Because that breeds insecurity. And the last thing an artist needs is insecurity. You need faith in what you do. You need to believe in yourself and your craft. And yeah, you're going to have failures like I talked about last time. We're all going to have failures. And we're not just going to have failures in our past, we're going to have them in our future. But if you approach your endeavors with the idea that they're going to fail, they will fail. And this is not about ego. You can approach your craft fiercely without thinking, I'm the best in the world. Because who knows who's the best in the world? It's all so subjective. Somebody out there might think that one of my books is the best in the world, whereas other people might think it's crap. But regardless of what other people think, I approach every book I write with a ferocity. Because I know, simply because my muse told me so, that what I'm about to write is worth writing. I had somebody tell me right before I started writing Defying Gravity. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot the title. Why do I do that all the time? Somebody told me before I started writing that book that it would probably have a really small audience based on what the subject matter is, because the subject centers around theater. Of course, in my mind, I'm thinking, there are a lot of people out there involved in the theater, from every level, from high school theater to community theater to small professional theaters to professional theaters, and that trickles into television and movies, because a lot of actors in theater wind up going into TV and movies. So there is a large audience out there, and I know that a vast majority of the, maybe not a vast majority, but a good portion of that audience might not read, or they might not be interested in reading a magical realism take on someone's experience with a production. That doesn't matter. That did not even play into the picture. When I started writing this book, I thought to myself, this is something a certain group of people need. And even if that certain group of people is just me, maybe it was a book that I just needed to write for myself because I needed to either exorcise some demons or revisit a past experience. It doesn't matter. I approached it ferociously. And I said, this story is worth writing. And from at least one perspective, it has been worth writing because it has been incredibly cathartic for me. It has been a joy, an absolute and utter joy to write this book because it did revisit a period of time in my life where I touched on something special. And yeah, it is a little autobiographical, and that's fine. And even if only the people that were involved in the same production that I was involved in read this book, at least they would get to revisit the same production as well. Yes, it's a bit different. Well, it's a lot different, but you get the point. Had I approached this book with a kind of mamby-pamby attitude, thinking maybe people will want to read this, or maybe this story is worth writing, I don't know, only time will tell, then I would have failed this book. It would have been yet another failure because I didn't trust my craft. And if you trust your craft enough, if you trust your muse enough, if you trust yourself enough, then you could approach every artistic endeavor you do with the necessary ferocity. Because there are a lot of people out there doing the same thing you're doing. And there are a lot of people out there naysaying from the time they wake up until the time they go to bed. You don't need that in your life. And one way to get rid of it is to be fierce, is to believe so profoundly and deeply in yourself and what you do. And know that every artistic endeavor that you start and finish was worth the journey. Because we need art. We desperately need stories and storytellers. And if you are a storyteller, then what you do is precious. And don't let anybody ever tell you different. Because if they do, you might not approach your craft with the ferocity that is necessary. And trust me, in the end, when you work with a fierce attitude, it's going to show because you're going to believe in what you're doing. And when you believe in what you're doing, it is a thing of beauty and it comes out. One thing I have always said when I was a teacher in various and sundry theater departments in this country, I said, when you enjoy what you do, the audience will know it. And when you hate what you do, they will equally know it. And when an audience sees that you hate what you're doing, bad things are going to happen. So when you write, or when you act, or when you direct, or when you paint, or when you compose with ferocity, it's going to show. And that confidence, that non-ego-driven confidence, will help to elevate your work to levels you have never before experienced. So trust yourself, trust your craft, trust your process, and trust that the end result is worthy. Because it is. Because it's art. And because we need it. We want it. We crave it. We love it. I know it might not be quite as easy as just hearing someone say, be fierce. And it might require that you not write anything until you come up with the story that you absolutely have to write. When you wake up that morning, or when you're just walking down the street and your muse taps you on the shoulder and says, haha, this is guaranteed. When you get that idea, when you get that inspiration, that's when you write, and that's when you write with ferocity, and you believe it. And when you're finished, be proud that you trusted yourself enough to write with ferocity. And that's all I got, Muse. Pretty quick and to the point. I don't want to beat this into the ground any more than I already have, because it might lose a bit of its ferocity. Anyway, thank you, Muse. You are an inspiration, which is what muses are supposed to do. And I thank you for it, because you, Muse, help me to be fierce. And that makes you awesome.